Hey, I'm Luke Ford. I want to talk about the Alexander technique. I first heard about the Alexander technique in 2008. I bought this book, The Rules of the Game. So, The Rules of the Game was the successor to The Game by Neil Strauss. And it had one sentence in there about the Alexander technique, something to the effect that the Alexander technique has been shown to benefit voice quality and posture and to have other health benefits. And I'd always struggled with voice quality, and I'd always struggled with posture. So as soon as I heard that, I thought, oh, I want to look into this Alexander technique thing. So I read a couple of books on the Alexander technique, and then I checked out a video on the Alexander technique from the Los Angeles Public Library. And then I got an offer in the mail for a new credit card. It said pay no interest for 12 months. So I decided I'd get myself an Alexander technique teacher. I paid $75 a lesson, took about 30 lessons. And after about 15 lessons, my teacher said, maybe you'd like to be trained to become a teacher of the Alexander technique. I said, okay, how long does it take? She said, 3 years. And I said, well, how much will the tuition be? I think she mentioned something like $23,000. And I said, well, how many hours a day is it? And she said, 3. And I said, is there homework? And she said, not really. So I trained for 3 years, I think 38 weeks a year, 3 hours a day, Monday through Friday, from 9:30 a.m. to 12:30 in the afternoon. And graduated in December of 2011 as an Alexander Technique teacher. And now my Alexander Technique website is alexander90210.com. I mainly teach actors and some models about the Alexander Technique and give some tips on how to move more easily and gracefully. And the Alexander Technique has had a dramatic effect on my life. It's helped with my voice, it's helped with my posture, it's helped with my confidence, it's helped with my overall health. And by letting go a lot of my tension patterns, muscular hoarding patterns, my body armoring against new ideas, because I was just so locked into these tension patterns, I was able to enhance my life in many ways. I started going to different 12-step programs. I was more open to the things that my therapist had to say. I was more open to things that my rabbi has said, and my life has really taken off and benefited from studying the Alexander technique. So almost all actors and a large number of musicians have heard about the Alexander technique. So virtually every major acting school in the United States has an Alexander technique teacher. And so who was F.M. Alexander? He lived from 1869 to 1955. He was an Australian actor. He developed the Alexander technique. And according to Wikipedia, it's an educational process applied to recognize and overcome reactive habitual limitations in movement and thinking. So my definition of the technique is the Alexander technique is a process by which we become aware of how we react to stimuli and then how we can let go of those reactions that do not serve us. So let's get a little bit more about F.M. Alexander's story and then how he developed the technique. So he used to suffer from ill health when he was a reciter in Melbourne, and he would suffer from hoarseness, and at times after performing, he could hardly speak, and friends noticed this audible gasping during his recitations. And so, as he described about 4 years later in his book, The Use of the Self, advice from doctors and voice trainers did not really help him. So he began a process of self-examination with mirrors, like a triptych of mirrors, three mirrors lined up so he could see what was going on. And he wanted to see what were his speaking habits to see if he could determine the cause of his hoarseness. And with time, he found that by using conscious control of his actions, by inhibiting wrong movements rather than trying to do the correct ones, and by focusing on the means whereby rather than the ends to be gained, his vocal problems and long-standing respiratory problems disappeared. And other evidence suggests that these insights came to Alexander over a much longer period of time, in a much less systematic fashion than he described in 1932, and that he borrowed a lot more from other teachers and other techniques rather than simply developing it all on his own. So that's a little bit of the history of the Alexander technique. So what does it mean? So the first thing that happened to me in an Alexander technique lesson is that my teacher asked me to stand up and sit down. And so when I did that for the first time, kind of threw myself forward, then stood up. And she asked me, well, did you notice what you're doing? And I said, no, I didn't notice. And she said, oh, like throwing yourself forward. Like, can you just like stand straight up? So I couldn't, it was really hard for me to go up. So what I do now with my students is we do a lot of chair work. In fact, you can basically teach the Alexander technique just doing chair work, which is what we're doing now, just looking at what happens to the body's reactions as we stand up and down. Because the same patterns of compression and tightening and restriction and pulling down and in on ourselves that we may engage in when we're standing up and sitting down will also apply to chopping vegetables, to public speaking, to running, to lifting, to playing tennis. We tend to carry the same tension patterns throughout our lives. So if you can learn to become aware of them just in the process of standing up and sitting down, then you can apply what you learn and practice that throughout your life. So what traditionally happens when most people stand up and sit down is that the neck starts to tighten. As the neck tightens, that pulls the head back. See? Compressing the neck. So let's just turn off my air conditioning. When the neck compresses, then the head's pulling back, and there are more joints in your neck than anywhere else in your body. So if the neck is tight or compressed, it sends ripple effects of tightening and compression down through your back and in your shoulders and throughout your body. So your whole body is going to compress and tighten when your neck compresses and tightens. So in Alexander terminology, we call this the head-neck relationship primary control. But you don't have to learn that, but just become aware of when you tighten your neck, because that almost never serves you, and when you compress your neck. So the Alexandrian approach to tightening and compressing the neck is to make a conscious decision to try to inhibit tightening and compression of the neck, and then make a conscious decision to think the back of the head forward, up in space. So we're thinking the very opposite of what our habitual pattern is, which is to tighten and compress and pull down. So it's primarily a thinking rather than a muscular doing. We're not pushing up like this, because that will lead to tightening. You might have noticed that in my back as I was trying to push up. Instead, if I allow myself to think up, free my neck, think the back of my head straight up in space, think my forehead forward and up. So like this, forward and up, the front of my head. So those are just the directions that I'm thinking. And then when I sit down and stand up, thinking those directions, there's not a lot of compression going on in my back, in my neck, and my head is kind of floating on top of my spine. It's leading my whole spine into length instead of compressing down. Instead, I'm able to lengthen and to widen because I'm letting go of my habitual habits of compressing, tightening, and pulling down when I encounter a stimulus. So there's another, that's the basic theory behind letting go of habitual tightening and compression patterns when you stand up and sit down. Now, here are some tips on how to go about it. So my favorite way to simply let go of tightening and compressing and to instead expand, to allow my head to lead my whole torso into length, is to expand my field of awareness. So as we go through life, we tend to get fixated on one thing. When we do that, if we just simply stare out the window at one thing, we'll kind of tighten and compress around that one thing. But if I make a conscious decision to expand my field of awareness, so much so that I see both the door and the window, and I keep them both in my mind, in my field of awareness at the same time, whoa, suddenly standing up, sitting down became a whole lot easier. For me, this works better than just the traditional directions of neck free, head releasing forward and up. So as I'm standing up and sitting down, I'm simultaneously keeping a broad field of awareness, which is not habitual. Habitual, I tighten and compress around one thing in front of me. And you'll notice that the more I can keep an expanded field of awareness, then the easier it is for me to float up and down. Another thing you can do is to listen for every different sound in your environment. And that heightened auditory sense of awareness might bring you up and down instead of compressing and tightening. Now, one thing you'll notice, most people, before they even get to a chair, they will start tightening and compressing, and then they'll hold their breath as they go into the chair. So most people, they're already starting to tighten and compress, like when they're like 2 or 3 steps away from the chair. So be aware of your habitual habits of tightening and compressing when you simply think about sitting down. It's just what we think has a profound effect on our musculature and the way we move. So I'm aware now what my habitual habit is to tighten, compress, and to hold my breath when I go to sit down. So instead, I inhibit that habitual pattern of holding my breath when I sit down, of tightening and compressing, and I simply think about moving into a chair. And instead, I try to keep my full length and my full width as I come onto the chair. I don't compress and collapse down onto the chair. Another thing I've noticed is the more you are in the present moment, the more free and limber you will be. And perhaps the best way to let go of all your preconceived notions, everything you believe, is to let go of all your preconceived notions, like let go of everything you think you know. Wow, well, that was so easy. I simply have to keep ridding myself of everything that I'm so sure of. Everything I believe on politics or religion, sociology, culture, just let it all go. Let go of everything I believe about myself, about other people. Let go of all my resentments, fears. Wow, that's easy. And when I can empty myself of everything that I think I know, suddenly, like my back unlocks and the breath flows in much easier. I have much less muscular tension around my back and my chest and my shoulders. My face frees up. Notice that you can often tell what people are thinking just because of the various tension patterns on their face, and the better you know them, the more accurately you can read what they're thinking just by how they're tightening and compressing around their face. So we tend to carry a lot of tension in our foreheads, around our eyes, and around our lips. I remember one time I was feeling quite down, and I simply let go of the tension that I was holding in my forehead, and around my mouth, and around my eyes. As I just do that now, I feel a lot happier because I kind of let go of all my fears, all my resentments, and I bring myself back to the present moment. And I'm not concerned about the future or the past or what anyone else is thinking or trying to settle scores. I'm just in the present moment, letting go of everything that I think I know so that I can be more in the present moment and thereby operate the most gracefully and smoothly and efficiently when you're in the present moment. the two biggest causes of muscular tension are thinking that you've got too much to do and not enough time to do it, or thinking that you got to be perfect. So if you can let go of those preconceptions, just come back to the present moment, and just tell yourself, I don't really know anything. I'm just here in the present moment. I'm going to just do what I can do. Then the breath will come in more easily, movement will come more easily, everything will flow more easily. So those are just some basic tips on Alexander technique. You can check out my website, alexander90210.com. Let me see if I can see what's going on in the chat room. So yeah, you're asking about deadlift. If you're tightening and compressing unnecessarily, if your back is crunching, if you're crunching your lower back in particular, if you're tipping your head back, compressing your neck, your lifting is going to be a lot less efficient. So you should never lift anything more than you can do with good form. If you start losing your form so that you're hurting yourself, so that you're ingraining muscular tension patterns even deeper into your musculature, into your psyche, into your habits, then you're doing yourself more harm than good. So when it comes to lifting or working out, never do more than what you can do comfortably with good form. But as soon as you learn your form, lose your form, you're most likely going to do far more harm to yourself than good. And a way to keep coming back, your best self, is to let go of everything you think you know, let go of all your resentments and fears, come back to the present moment, and expand your field of awareness. So you can see both sides of the room and realize that there's infinite space above you, there's infinite space below you, there's infinite space in front of you, and there's infinite space behind you. You just locate yourself in that infinite space, feeling the support of the floor. Just have a desire to move up through your musculature. You can think up through your back, through your stomach, through your chest, up through your neck, the head releasing forward and up. And then this is the direction for your head to release forward and up. So I'll come back here. So wherever you're going, our habits is to tip the head back and down. So my left hand here is just a signal for where you want your forehead to release to. So if I'm coming down, I'm still releasing out and away with my thinking. Because our natural habit is to tip the head back and down, compressing the neck, thereby compressing all of the back, compressing our breathing, and making our movement much less efficient. So even when I'm here, still releasing the head in this direction. When I'm coming down to the ground, still releasing the head in this direction. So if you give little thought to your directions, thinking about your shoulders releasing to the sides, thinking about the head releasing forward and up, thinking about the back being long and wide, then you'll move much more efficiently and you'll be your best self. And to just come back to the present moment, let go of everything you think you know. Think about the infinite space around you. Expand your field of awareness so you're seeing both sides of the room. That sends like upward direction through your musculature, through your back and your neck and your face. But just start moving up, because often we'll tend to slump and compress and collapse. But if we expand the field of awareness, that's, for me, the most efficient way to send that upward direction through your body, just rippling up, thinking up, expanded, instead of feeling compressed and pulled down. And then when you let go of your habitual tension patterns, you also will let go of many of your habitual thinking patterns, because you don't think freely when your body is tight and compressed, okay? Your body's tight and compressed, your thinking is going to be tight and compressed. When your body is sore and aching, your mind is thinking is not going to be free and flying, okay? When your body is tentative and awkward and tense, your thinking is going to be tentative, awkward, and tense. When you've got these overwhelming muscular compression patterns, the way you relate to other people is not going to be graceful and easy. Instead, if you've got a lot of tension patterns, other people are going to feel the tension. It's like, whoa. And one of the biggest signs of tension is a head-neck relationship. which is like this, okay, where people are triggered. So the head kind of juts forward and the head rotates back, compressing the neck. Okay, this is like the fight or flight reflex. This is the startle pattern. You'll see a lot of people kind of go like this all their lives. They're kind of going around like this, and they're just locked into this startle pattern, this fight or flight reflex. You'll notice that they tend to go off easily. Okay, or like some people, boxers, they're like this often, and they're just ready to explode. I hate being in that position. So come back to being free, expanding the field of awareness. Because when you're free, you're tall, you're wide, you're limber, you're letting go of unnecessary muscular tension patterns, then your thinking is free and wide. You can take in different points of view. You don't get triggered so easily. On the alt-right, there's a lot of talk about getting triggered, where you can't get triggered unless your neck tightens and compresses. As long as your neck is free, you cannot be depressed, you cannot be angry, you cannot have any extreme emotion. Like every emotion correlates with a certain alignment of the musculature. So if your neck is free and your head's releasing to lead your torso into length, you're never going to get triggered. Okay, you're never going to get angry, you're never going to get depressed. Okay, you're not going to do things that you regret. Okay, and you can see someone being triggered because this is what happens to someone who's triggered. The head juts forward and rotates back, compressing the neck. And when the neck gets compressed, the back starts compressing because there are all these joints in the neck. So as much as possible, you want a free neck. What does a free neck mean? It means that someone can come along, just like use a finger, move your head around effortlessly without putting any effort. Someone can move your head around without you knowing which direction they're moving, and you're not resisting them. That's what a free neck is. Okay, so maybe you've got a girlfriend or a boyfriend who you trust to touch you. Just let them very gently move your neck around. And if they can move your neck around without putting any strain or effort into it, the least effort it takes them, that means the more free your neck is. The more free your neck is, the more free your whole body will be. The more free your thinking will be, the more free your emotions will be. Like when your body is tight and compressed, your emotions are going to be tight and compressed. When your body is free and graceful, your thinking is going to be free and graceful. The way you relate to other people will be free and graceful. You won't get stuck in these habitual patterns of getting triggered by what other people say or do. You won't tighten up and compress in challenging social situations or on a job interview. You won't go to the job interview or tight and compress and like this. Like, do you know what it's like to touch someone who's got all these icky tension patterns? It feels horrible. Okay, nobody wants to be touched by someone who's tense. But when you're free, your touch is warm because the blood flows much more easily if you don't have these weird tension patterns going on. Your hands are warm. Touch is pleasant. People like to hug you. People like to shake your hand. And people like being around you if you're free and easy with yourself, with your body, with your musculature, with your thinking. It all goes together. You start tightening up in your thinking, your body's going to tighten up. If you start tightening up in your emotions, your body and your thinking are going to tighten up. So your body, your emotions, and your thinking are all simultaneously affecting each other. So you can take back control, conscious, constructive control of yourself by freeing your neck, expanding your field of awareness, having a desire to lengthen up, not by pushing up muscularly, but it's much more gentle. It's by moving up, what we're really saying is that you're letting go of your habitual pulling down, tension, compression patterns. You'll notice as people age, the more they get locked into their tension patterns. So some people, they kind of go around like this, and then they go, well, a dollar is still not backed by a gold standard. It's not backed by a gold standard. You know what I mean, young man? Okay, and like the jaw is jutting, and the face is all distorted, and they got these weird tension patterns going on, and suddenly, you're dealing with a crank. Okay, cranks tend to have a lot of weird tension patterns. How often have you met a crank who is easy and smooth in the way they relate to themselves, to other people? They don't have interfering tension patterns going on. They're tall, they're limber, they're free, they're graceful, they're at ease. No, cranks You know, they have one shoulder taller than the other. They have an awkward way of walking. Shaking hands feels icky because there's so much tension patterns going on in them. You know, the head, neck, back relationships all distorted. And they're going about like Trump's a Nazi, man. This is like 1939 all over again, okay? Like conspiracy theorists, like, you know, they got these weird tension patterns going on, and maybe it's the left shoulder that's taller, and it's like, oh, North Korea's about to unleash nukes, man. You don't want to be around people like that, okay? So think about successful people. Usually successful people do what they do with the most ease. When you see a competition in tennis, usually the person who is the most graceful and at ease with his body is the most effective tennis player or golf player or public speaker. Like, think about Barack Obama versus John McCain, okay? Barack Obama was much more free, easy, relaxed in his body than John McCain, who had all sorts of weird tension patterns going on. Think about 1980, Ronald Reagan versus Jimmy Carter. Like, Jimmy Carter had all these weird tension patterns going on. Ronald Reagan was graceful and easy. He had a beautiful sounding voice because he didn't have weird tension compression patterns negatively affecting his voice box. George W. Bush had all sorts of weird tension patterns going on, so it kind of made him a little ill at ease. Donald Trump seemed a lot more at ease and comfortable with his body. At least that's what Stormy Daniels says. So the great public speakers, they don't give their necks away. You'll notice that. They don't compress their necks. They're not pulling down like this or like this, or they're not, you know, talking to you like this, you know, stuck in one way like this. But instead, the great public speakers, they don't give their necks away. And they're just cool and calm. They're at ease with themselves. They'll just deliver from a place of calm and ease. As opposed to the lousy public speakers. They're like you're dealing with the elephant man. So yeah, David Foster Wallace had a ton of tension patterns, and he offed himself. So guys, don't be like David Foster Wallace. Don't have weird tension patterns, and don't off yourselves, okay? So this sounds like some weird woo-woo magic stuff, you say? Well, it's taught in every acting school. It's been tested. It's been around over 100 years. Almost all the major actors have taken Alexander technique lessons. It has saved countless people from pain and suffering because unnecessary tension patterns, they pull on your musculature, they pull bones out of place, and can do serious health problems to you. So don't be a jerk. Don't be filled with unnecessary muscular tension. Like, you'll put people off. Your touch will be unpleasant. Your thinking will be constricted. You might notice in my streams, I'm able to easily articulate multiple points of view that are diametrically opposed to each other. So how can I easily articulate completely opposing points of view without getting triggered? You know, without feeling the need to fixate on one point of view as the superior one and all others are of your father, the devil. Because I'm pretty free in my body. My neck is free, my back is free, my shoulders are free. My shoulders used to ache all the time, no more. I only rarely have back pain. I only rarely have muscular pain because I don't have these overwhelming muscular tension patterns that grip, okay, tighten and compress. So as long as my musculature is free, as long as my body is free, as long as my face is free from unnecessary tension, as long as my neck is free, then I can hear opposing points of view, I can articulate them, I can restate them, I can respond to them without getting triggered. But if you start seeing, you know, my neck going forward, my shoulders rising up, my head rotating backwards to tighten my neck, you know, then I'm triggered, okay? Then I'm not gonna think as clearly, then I'm gonna get, you know, go into stage black. So in security work, they talk about color coding. So black is when you're engaged, you're in the fight, you're not aware of anything else. You know, white is where you're completely oblivious. And then there's yellow, where you start to become aware, orange, when you're moderately aware, red, is when you're heavily aware of what's going on and you're about to launch into combat. So the wider your field of awareness, the more freedom you will have in your thinking, in your body, and in your emotions. And if your emotions get tight, your thinking and body is going to get tight. If your thinking frees up, your emotions will free up, your back will free up. As your back unlocks, find breathing easier, you get more oxygen in and out, you feel better. And does the yarmulke help with the technique? Oswald Spangler, how awesome to meet the great sage in the YouTube chat room. Yeah, the yarmulke, it like helps connect me to God, so it helps me to get greater length on my spine as my head just kind of frees up and rises towards God and takes my whole torso with it. So, are there any other questions about the Alexander technique? It's a great way to regain constructive conscious control of your life, to save yourself on chiropractic and physical therapy bills, to develop the quality of your voice, to learn to move more easily and gracefully, learn to relate to yourself and to other people with much more ease, to learn to think more freely. You have to listen to different points of view, and you'll be triggered much less, and you won't feel the need to kind of tighten and compress around certain ideas, but instead you can just consider them freely, let them flow through you. You don't have to go all out of kilter with ideas that you haven't heard before. So if you want more information, check out my website, Alexander90210. Remember to expand your field of awareness. Notice when you're pulling down, tightening, and compressing unnecessarily, because you'll feel a lot better when you let go of that unnecessary tension. So that gets some upward direction. Free the neck, free the face, free around the eyes, free around the lips, and enjoy a sense of freedom, of mastery, of constructive conscious control. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.